Peggy, now it's your time, and thank you for your time because I think you said that you are just after breakfast, yeah? So in the US it's early morning.
Yeah, I'm done fine. Yeah, go ahead. I'm ready. If you guys are ready, I'm not falling asleep in the afternoon.
Okay, so we are ready.
So you can play the recorded lecture, so then I can answer question afterwards.
Afterwards. Okay, do you want to play the presentation right now or after your speech?
Oh, you play the video first.
Okay.
That's my presentation, and then I will answer question if anybody in the audience have questions.
Okay.
Talk about Prism adaptation treatment for spatial neglect. I work at Kessler Foundation as a senior research scientist and IP liaison. I also am affiliated with Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School. So first of all, I would like to share with you where I am. Kessler Foundation is in West Orange, New Jersey, in the United States. In Kessler Foundation, we have multiple research centers. I work at Center for Stroke Rehabilitation Research. My office is very close to New York City. So spatial neglect is a very common neurological disorder. We conducted several research studies to establish its prevalence. The prevalence is up to 55% after right brain stroke, up to 45% after left brain stroke. It can also occur after traumatic brain injury, and the prevalence rate is about 30 to 40%. It also can occur after other types of brain injuries that damage critical neural networks. And the critical neural networks is this one. It's critical to spatial processing and attention orientation. So basically the dorsal and ventral attention networks. This cartoon represents the left and the right hemisphere of our brain. For information coming in, visual information comes in through visual cortex and goes to parietal, frontal lobes to temporal lobes. The idea about the mechanism about spatial attention or spatial neglect is each hemisphere is paying attention and processing information from the contralateral side of space in the external world. So the right hemisphere is processing attending stimuli from the left side of the world. The right hemisphere is processing information from right side of the world. And the two hemispheres are always interacting with each other and coming into this dynamic balance so that in healthy people who do not have brain injuries, we sit up straight, we walk straight, we can easily find centers of our environment. When right hemisphere is damaged in this example, the left hemisphere is relatively stronger and have greater activation compared to the damaged right hemisphere. So in this case, the individual will pay a lot of attention, more attention to the right side, and in the same time, ignoring the left. So patients who have right brain damage, they usually neglect the left side of space, left neglect. Because this is a network problem, not only the cortical regions are very important in this mechanism, the white matter fiber tracks are also important. These white matter tracks are connecting cortical regions, these key regions, from the back of the brain to the front of the brain. If any of these white matter tracks are damaged, the person may develop spatial neglect in greater severity, and then the symptoms may last longer and become chronic spatial neglect. Here I want to show you an illustration from one of my studies. This is called the lesion mapping. We map lesions, locations, and size on standardized brain so that we can compare different patients. So you can see there are 12 rows representing 12 different patients. They all have spatial neglect. However, their lesion profile can differ very much. It could be very small or subcortical. It could be large cortical. It could be more anterior. It could be more posterior. So if you just look at a CT scan or MRI scan of the individual, of a patient, you may not be 100% sure whether a patient has spatial neglect or not. You need to look into their symptom presentation. In the next few slides, I'm going to show you a few examples, and I am going to focus on left neglect. However, patient can have right neglect after left hemisphere damage. So in this example, this is a star cancellation task. It's a visual search task. You print out this page and you ask patient to circle the target, which is small stars, and ignoring other stimuli. You can see this individual is circling stars on the right side, neglecting this part of the page. Another is figure copying task. So we print out this model. We call it scene copying. So with these on the piece of paper, we ask the individual to copy this entire thing on the same page, just immediately right below. And this person is drawing more on the right side, neglecting the left side. Another is a very simple task you can ask patient to do. You just give them a piece of paper and ask them to draw a clock. So almost all the patients will draw the circle themselves. No, that's the first thing they do. And that's the space they just defined. Even in that situation, they still neglecting half of the space they just defined themselves. So this individual only put numbers and hands on the right side, neglecting the left space. Sorry. Next example is a reading task. I print out this paragraph for a patient, and I have exact same paragraph in front of me. I asked the patient to read the paragraph out loud. On my end, I underline words the patient read. As you can see, this person only read this part of the paragraph, neglecting the left side. So these are tasks that you can do. You can ask patient to do a task and you observe the outcome, or you can observe them without asking them to do anything. So these are examples. So individuals have very severe neglect will show this gaze bias toward the good side, non-neglected side. So this individual always look toward the right, even though he had no problem moving his eyes to the center or to the left. The range of motion of their eyes, their oculomotor function are fine, but they prefer to look toward the right. This is a more severe example. This individual also looked to the right, and also her body posture is leaning toward the right. We think that's because the subjective body midline has shifted to the right side. So this part, the left of her world, just doesn't exist, even for her subjective body midline. Another example that we always see for patients who wear glasses is like this. You don't need vision to wear glasses. However, so for example, in the morning when you just wake up, you fumble around your bed, you touch your glasses, and you open it up and you put on your face without no problem, right? So for individuals with spatial neglect, they are neglecting not just the left space externally, but also left side of their body parts. So they may neglect their left ear. So when they put on glasses, the leg of the glasses is not touching their ear, and they may neglect their face. So you may not see clearly, but that morning this individual only shaved on the right side, didn't shave on the left. They may also neglect their left arm, their left leg. Here's another example. It's a video I want to show you. It's a breakfast setting.
Try this read. All right, did you finish reading? Thank you.
You need a spoon. You see it? It's on your tray.
It's on my tray.
Yes.
Underneath? All right.
Look around your tray, dear. There you go.
So this patient, as you just saw, she never initiate movement. She never turned her head to the left space, right? And eventually the therapist have to provide the spoon that she's looking for, which is on the left. So there's a high impact of spatial neglect on their daily life activities and on their prognosis. We already show you that there's a high prevalence of spatial neglect. And patients who have spatial neglect, they require greater rehabilitation effort. They need to receive more sessions, and even when they receive more sessions, their outcome may not be as good as patients who do not have spatial neglect. Once they regain the physical strength to walk around, to use the wheelchair, their risk of in-hospital falls and injuries actually increase because they are not paying attention to everything in their environment. Therefore, spatial neglect predicts poor prognosis in self-care, mobility, community reintegration. When they go home, family members have difficulty to manage their spatial neglect symptoms or deficits or consequences, intensifies caregiver burden. And all these are concluded based on our research on different topics. So next, I'm going to talk about Prism adaptation. We will start with this short video.
A stroke can be easy to detect. A loved one can't speak. Perhaps they can't move. But there's another sign of a stroke that many of us can't see. It's called spatial neglect, and it can occur during or after a stroke, causing distorted visual movements. Fortunately, there's a solution by using optical prism technology during rehabilitation. If you or a loved one have experienced a stroke, ask your doctor about spatial neglect. Spatial neglect. See the whole picture at kesslerfoundation.org. A stroke can...
Okay, so Prism adaptation itself is not a treatment. It's a known visual motor phenomenon. You can find different documentation about it, and one of the studies, one of the first systematic research studies is published in Science, for example. And anyone whose cortical cerebellar circuits, the connection between the cerebellum and the cerebral are intact, should demonstrate this Prism adaptation phenomenon. And what do I mean by phenomenon? I'm going to show examples. Here, before you put on any glasses, if I ask you to touch a target, for example, a tennis ball, you should not have any problem, just go straight ahead. And wearing this thick prism goggles, the vision will be shifted. This is the actual image of the target, which is the pen. And then once you put on the prism goggles, the image of the pen will shift to here. So in this illustration this is the actual target, but the image of the target shift to the right side, right? So at the beginning, when you just put on the prism lenses, the motor system illustrated by arm movement will still try to touch the image, right? Because that's how our motor system is working. We guide it by vision. So the first try, the arm will not reach the target, but reach right to the right side of the target. And then after a few practice, for healthy people, probably after 5 to 10 practice, this will occur, that you will not have problem to touch the target, right? The motor system register the vision shift and move to the left of the image in order to touch the target. And that is when prism adaptation occurs. So the key word here is adaptation. Motor system is adapting to the shifted vision in order to reach the target. And after a while, once adaptation occurs, we remove the prism goggles, right? At the time, the motor system already have this adapted direction, move more to the left in order to touch the target. So when the goggle is removed, the motor system still go to the left of the image, even though the image and the target are the same location now. So this was called, this error, we call it after effect. And we are actually using this after effect to treat as the foundation, the basis for treating left neglect. Why? Because see, the hand is moving to the left, which is the space that patient with left neglect do not initiate movement toward to. But after effect will disappear very quickly. In healthy individuals, probably in a few minutes. In patients, probably a couple more minutes or even an hour, depending on the task you ask them to do, and then will show after effect slowly disappear. So this is the Prism adaptation phenomena. And until 1998, a group of researchers, Rosati et al. In France, they started using Prism adaptation, like what I just showed you, using take advantage of that after effect to treat patients who have spatial neglect. So they did a randomized control trial for patients in the Prism group or in the control group. These are represented drawing behaviors. So before treatment, both individuals only copy things on the right side, and immediately after the treatment, control group doesn't change the behavior, but the Prism group draw more on the right side, on the left side. 2 hours later, this individual actually show more drawings on the left, and the control group doesn't change. So, and this is the group level analysis that Prism group are showing greater improvement. So since then, a lot of studies coming out of this one session treatment study. And until 2018, a Canadian group, Cambot et al., they did a systematic review. They want to see whether Prism adaptation can improve not only the drawing behavior, but also functional task behavior, such as reading, writing, ADL, activity of daily living, direct test, or self-report questionnaire, or their navigation. So they review many studies, and they plot in this chart to show whether how many number of studies show significant effect or no effect on any specific outcome measure. So overall, you can say it's mixed results. However, there are more studies show significant effect than studies show no significant effect. So this means that not all the patient will benefit from Prism adaptation. So there are new studies, including our study from our group. We want to identify who can benefit from Prism adaptation. If they can, and if we can identify this patient early on, we will provide a treatment. For patients we think that they may not benefit from the treatment, then they should receive other types of spatial neglect therapy. So the idea is how Prism adaptation works is at the brain level. Even though we're using an optic device, the key is adaptation. And adaptation occurs from cerebellum to parietal cortex to motor cortex. And these are very important circuits for Prism adaptation, the phenomena to work. And then it will, after multiple sessions, will build up the change and affect other areas of the brain, so that the treatment effect, the after effect will become treatment effect. The treatment effect will be further transferred down the line, become a therapeutic effect, improving reading and writing, improving ADLs. Over the years, because through our research projects, we developed a treatment kit. We called it Kessler Foundation Prism Adaptation Treatment, KF-PAT. So all these are devices that's necessary for the Prism adaptation treatment, especially for the KF-PAT protocol, and they can be packed together into a bag that you can bring it to anywhere. You can bring it to patient's room, to the therapy gym, even to patients' homes. So in this specific protocol, we ask therapists to provide one session a day, each session including 60 visual motor movements with Prism goggles on, or up to 20 minutes. So if the patient really, most patients can actually finish 60 movements in 10 to 15 minutes. But if for some patients who have very severe neglect, you can do it up to 20 minutes. And we recommend to do this for 10 days. And after we created that Prism adaptation kit, we conducted a implementation project. It lasted for more than 5 years with my longtime collaborator, Kimberly Reha. We trained more than 100 occupational therapists across the United States in these 16 different rehabilitation hospitals. We teach them how to assess and treat patients who have spatial neglect. So in this project, more than 4,000 patients received spatial neglect care, and 55% of them were identified as having spatial neglect. Among these individuals, 64% of them have left neglect, 36% of them have right neglect. And in this project, we collect a lot of information, and based on the information, we published several papers already. This one, we call the implementation process paper, is documents how we complete this implementation project. You're welcome to take a look, for your facilities, want to implement Prism adaptation treatment. And then we also show that Prism adaptation treatment improves inpatient rehab outcome. And we treat both right-sided and left-sided spatial neglect patients using Prism adaptation treatment, and both patients with either side of neglect, they show a similar functional improvement. Okay, so this is the treatment outcome, the treatment protocol that I mentioned a few minutes ago. However, this regimen may not be implemented easily in United States, because in United States, patients only stay for about 2 to 3 weeks in rehab hospitals. So 10 sessions for some therapists, they think this is very difficult to implement. So use the data that we collected from the implementation project, because we have thousands of patients' data points. We asked this question: does the number of Prism adaptation treatment sessions have impact on improvement, on spatial neglect improvement and outcomes? I'm not going to detail about how we analyze it. I'm going to emphasize on the results. So we found that receiving more sessions, each day they receive one session. Receiving more sessions predict greater improvement in both spatial neglect and the rehabilitation outcome. And for patients can receive higher frequency, meaning fewer days between 2 consecutive sessions. Ideally is consecutive days. If they receive higher frequency and higher number of sessions, they predict even better improvement. So we really recommend using Prism adaptation treatment in inpatient rehabilitation, and more the better. So, but because you don't have this length of stay problems we do in the United States, my suggestion is you provide the treatment at least once a day for 10 days or over 2 weeks. Within each session, the time period, how patient, wearing the Prism goggle does not matter. What matters is the number of the reaching movement. We recommend at least 60, but you can go all the way up to 100. So what matters is the number of visually guided arm reaching movements. If the patient is wearing the Prism goggles, watching TV or do nothing, that will not work. It's the number of the visually guided arm reaching movement that will improve their adaptation, that will enhance their adaptation. And assess the outcome after 10 days. If neglect improves or doesn't improve to the satisfactory level, then you can do another round of Prism adaptation or combine with other treatments. So these are the take-home message. All brain injury patients, especially stroke patients, should be screened for spatial neglect. Once you identify, diagnose with spatial neglect, then you can provide treatment. Prism adaptation treatment is a visual motor training using an optic device. And it does not improve visual function. It does not improve their oculomotor function. It actually improves their functional vision, which is spatial neglect. Integrating the treatment in clinical practice is feasible and recommended. Because of short of time, I may not have time to answer all of your questions. If you have further questions, I recommend you to email me. Here's my email address. And I also recommend you to go to this website that's created for patients, family members, and clinicians related to spatial neglect. Thank you very much.